Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV on a Balls McWednesday. I'm Jeff. That is Tom. On Twitter, it is at J Cameron Show, and away we go. Let's go, man. We are replete with things to get into today. A ton. We're just talking points all the way through this, the day before the draft. Really looking forward to the draft. We finally had something get juicy. I'm not going to lead with the draft because we got Florida State baseball from yesterday, which is what I am going to lead with. A lot of layers to all of that. But I will say, finally, it feels like, sometimes they say that a playoff series in the NBA or a playoff series in the NHL, unfortunately for us last night, this holds true, doesn't really begin until the road team wins. And now you have a series. I felt like the NFL draft wouldn't really begin to get juicy until you started to hear with teeth rumors that teams are willing to make some moves. And it sounds like we already have a couple trades that may have been completed and will be announced on draft night, which is tomorrow. We'll be watching at the CP, at least for a little while, just hanging out. It's not an official party. I think it's more of a relaxing sort of, let's just take advantage of a great place like the Corner Pocket and have a cold beverage and watch the NFL draft together. That's all it really is, just kind of a watch get together, if you will. But anyhow, what I'm pointing out is it didn't look like there was going to be a lot in the way of movement. Now it sounds like there may be some movement within the top 10 and some more movement to come maybe later today. So be on the lookout. That's a good thing. I'll touch on those rumors in a minute. But let's start with the story of the day, which was more than baseball. It was certainly more than baseball. I will grant you that. An emotional scene at Dick Howser Stadium. The pregame festivities, simply phenomenal. It's interesting. It's what you love about sport. It is what you love about sport without being cliche. This shared experience, this bond, this opportunity to be distracted in a necessary way, in a useful way, camaraderie, all the things we love, companionship, something to focus on other than feelings of sadness and despair and frustration and anger and all of those things that we're too often forced into dealing with and talking about. After yet another tragedy, this one affecting the Tallahassee community, the Florida State community, obviously the students on campus and the professors and faculty, and that includes coaches and players. And, you get a chance to come together yesterday. And once again, David Black, the Chiefs doing the stuff that they do is just amazing. And I thought it was an incredible scene. I also think it was good to see Florida State's response after falling down early. I know baseball, the game itself, isn't nearly as important as all the other things I'm making reference to, but I did wonder where their head would be at. I did wonder whether or not they would respond after getting down early. Things seemed sort of lethargic in the beginning, but for Florida State, they find a way to come back in this game, and they do so with some big innings and some big performances from a few individuals that are worth talking about. And then you have a not so fortunate situation or unfortunate situation that I think we have to address. I know Link Jarrett was asked about it as well. I want to say before we address that issue, first of all, I'll talk about the game itself. But I also want to say that I really think Link does a great job of handling talking points, discussing his team, analyzing a baseball game, his interactions with students and fans and announcers and the assembled press is really, to me, as good as it gets for coaches. I believe now everybody's got to be who they are, and he's a no-nonsense, straightforward kind of guy, but he doesn't try to be something he's not. And I'll tell you something else he is. He's introspective. He is a smart gentleman who thinks before he answers questions. He listens and digests questions before giving those answers. He's prepared. He's always prepared. I want to say that we watch coaches all over the country. We watch GMs all over the country. We watch people in high-profile positions who are forced to answer tough questions sometimes. Sometimes it's as simple as a sports question. Other times it's more of a societal question. Could be a very tragic incident or one that it invokes emotion of any kind, including that of positive emotions. And they don't always handle the situation very well. They don't always answer the questions very well. They don't always take the time to give thought to what they're saying. They don't anticipate questions very well. That's the other part of giving good answers, is I think having a good grasp or understanding of what might be asked of you after this particular moment, this particular incident, this particular game. I think it's important to have an idea before you ever step to the dais or before the cameras or before the microphones, to have an understanding of what you might want to say. If asked this, I'll say this, and it would preferably be genuine, but even if it's not, it certainly needs to be more prepared than some of what we see all around the country constantly. And I think Link exemplifies that. I'm giving him credit for that. Is he a perfect coach? There's no perfect coach. There's no perfect announcer. There's no perfect talk show host. There's no perfect person. Got it. But is he really good at what he does? Yes. And is he really good with all of the other stuff too, in the way of answering questions, tough questions, emotional moments? I think he is. I think he does a very, very good job. And I thought it was on display multiple times yesterday. Just to let you in, I did not stay for the game. I drove over to see what that was going to look like. And I got to see what I wanted to see, but I needed to get home for family reasons. They weren't able to go to the game. My family wasn't. So I came home here and watched it. And I've got to admit, I missed the first inning because I was driving back from campus. But that said, I listened to the broadcast and I got to hear, and I thought that was great that, you get the flavor for Florida State there, which is nice. Eduardo Perez being in the booth was nice. And I think they handled it really well. I think the broadcast went well. And that includes the interview that they did with Link during the broadcast. And he was very good there too, really emphasizing the same points that he wanted to make in the post game, which was sort of the healing moment that could take place before this baseball game, and the ability to welcome people in, students, faculty, fans, community, everybody coming together for something larger than a baseball game. And I think that was the right attitude. I think that was the right play. I think it all played out the way that you would hope it would. And that included, now to the game itself, Florida State getting a win in which they did have to deal with emotions and come back from a deficit. And the offense obviously going a long way in helping erase said deficit. You get big performances from Gage Harrelson. You get 3 RBIs from Hunter Carnes, who I love a lot. Obviously, Max Williams homers here. Chase Williams was the story of the game, I thought. Is that speed changes everything about this Florida State team. And since he's come back, he has been a menace to opposing teams. I mean, I don't think any of us could have expected to see this version. This is the hopeful version before the season began. And now you're getting it from a kid who missed all that time due to injury. So it's really rather remarkable to see that, and Florida State gets the win. That's well and good. We got some answers to some questions that we asked on Monday and Tuesday as well, which is, did we think that Virginia series is going to be made up? The answer is no, from what I can tell from Link's answer yesterday. And I pontificated on this a little bit yesterday as well in the bonus hour. It doesn't feel like that's a series that is ever going to be made up. Tom and I discussed it as well. Speaking of which, Tommy, welcome in. I feel like we first guessed this one, not that would be easy or, hard, I should say, to get right, but they're not going to make that series up. From Link's answer yesterday tells me they're not making that series up.
No, the only thing they could potentially do is maybe play a game against a different opponent in the midweek and wedge one in there. But travel-wise, it doesn't make sense. Logistically, it doesn't make sense. The only other place you could maybe stick it is on the way up to North Carolina before you play in whatever that new format is of the ACC tournament and the ACC championship. Because, we did that 15 years ago. Well, not quite 15 years ago, but the Jameis Winston era when he was playing right field and he was your closer. I remember we scheduled an extra game on the way up to go to, no doubt, Charlotte or Greensboro, and we played North Carolina on the road for an extra game because they had a cancellation, we had a cancellation. So if you wanted to do that, you could, but I would also look at our situation with our pitching staff and how everything lines up between midweek and weekend. I don't think that they're in a rush to add some more midweek games, which creates a domino effect and problems for the weekend with what is a thin pitching staff. It's not without, real bite to it, but you have only a few options that you feel very good about, and you probably don't want to create a situation that is a net negative versus at this point what it is, which is a wash.
Yeah, I don't think so either, especially not on your way to play in a tournament. So I wouldn't do that. I remember what you're talking about now, Tom. Thanks for the memory refresher. That was a series we scheduled with North Carolina in which it was a non-conference game.
Yeah. It was a one-off. It was a random one-off. I remember this. I was at a place that doesn't advertise with us because they carried the game. It was televised, so somebody picked it up. But I'm pretty sure Jameis had an outfield assist from right field, one of those lasers that he threw in very limited time at that position. But yeah, it was a one-off on the way up, and both teams were ranked in the RPI at least pretty high. It was an opportunity to bolster the resume. If you wanted to do that, you could. I wonder if maybe the next couple of weeks worth of results might influence a decision to see if you can patch something together quickly for a resume booster. But it sounds like with Florida State, Virginia ain't down the road. That's the problem too. If this was Georgia Tech, maybe you'd find something a little bit more amenable, but that's a 3-game series, man. Maybe you make up one at best would be my guess.
Wouldn't it be cool in an ideal world? I don't know how many midweek games we have left and who's on that slate. I haven't pulled it up as of right now as we're talking about this. If you just got rid of whoever that was and somehow you and Virginia could just play a bunch of one-offs like we do with Florida to go through the rest of because the quality of competition, you would love that.
Well, that's absolutely. I think so. They don't do anything next week because it's exam week. Traditionally, you don't play a midweek at that time. And I think there's Jacksonville after. I'll go take a look at the schedule. But you have one midweek after that. My thought was maybe you could squeeze that into exam week if you wanted to. But they've got 2 logistical issues. Number one, they got to go out to California and play in Berkeley against ACC foe Cal, which really screws up, body clock and time zones and jet lag, all that kind of stuff. And Link is very protective of that. And then your final weekend series against North Carolina begins on a Thursday. So that doesn't lend itself towards, scheduling a twofer in the midweek because you start on Thursday. So it really is. It's just, I think it's a lost cause. If this was a cancellation a month ago, you could probably gerrymander things to fit. But I don't know, man. That's a logistical nightmare. And I don't think Link is trying to go out of his way to disrupt what little stability he has in organizing his pitching staff in a given week.
So if we look at the big picture right now for Florida State baseball, maybe I'll save the second segment. We have audio of Link last night being asked a question that I want to address. And I wasn't surprised when I woke up very early this morning and looked at my emails to start the day. It's kind of how I get things going. I walk the dogs, I come back in, the kids get out the door, they go to school, I pour a cup of joe, I sit down, I begin to attack the day's information. Was not shocked to see a lot of questions about a certain individual who homered last night. So that lets me know there's a tipping point here. There's a bit of a tipping point here. We've all noticed it. I've said something about it several times, and now we have an actual suspension forthcoming because of it. So it bears addressing. We need to address it. But before we do, I want to look at big picture here. Florida State's in a good spot offensively because of the return of a Chase Williams, the emergence, I think, the continued emergence, I think, of a Hunter Carnes. I think we already know that there are guys that have been consistent throughout the year. One of them is the aforementioned Max Williams. Of course, Gage Harrelson was great last night, and he's been great all year long. And so that was really big. And I just think you're starting to see some things. We're talking about a diversity of offense here. You've got a team now that has a nice mixture of power, bat-to-ball skills, base stealing, and speed. There's just a lot of ways from both sides of the plate that they can really hurt you. I think that we first guessed that, hey, don't worry about that handful of games where maybe they weren't scoring in the way that you had hoped that they would. Baseball teams go through droughts. Baseball teams have some offensive woes and ups and downs and peaks and valleys. A lot of it has to do with the quality of the frontline pitching you're seeing or not seeing in any given week or a couple of weeks. So that's fine. A pitcher can always rule the day. Now, I don't care if you're the 27 Yankees. I don't care if name any team in the last 10 years that has led the major leagues in offense. When you get into the postseason, if they're facing a team that has a handful or a grouping of good starting pitchers and relievers, that can be mitigated. So pitching especially when it's right, can offset great hitting. But what are you over the course of a bulk of games, a large amount of games? Florida State's offense is very good is what it is. That's what Florida State's offense is. It's very, very good. They don't do everything perfectly well, but they're very, very good. The pitching is what we've been worried about, and I think we will continue to worry about to some degree, save for a couple of those Friday night, Saturday night guys. I think we'll be worried the rest of the way. If there's going to be an Achilles heel, it feels like that is going to be the Achilles heel. And you're going to get some real tests now, because I'll tell you, Clemson's really good and Louisville is really good as well. And so you've now got some opportunities to see how you respond to teams that are capable of providing adversity to you both mentally and the difficulty of dealing with what they are physically. And Link likes to point that out, what teams can do to you physically as well as mentally. His team has got a bunch of opportunities here. Now we get into the grind of the better competition. And I'll point out too that it's not going to be for me necessarily what the record is in those matchups. So say the 6 games against Louisville and Clemson. You might look at that and say, well, whatever their record is in that is going to be a snapshot of what they'll likely be. Nah, not necessarily true. Not necessarily true. There are a lot of reasons why that may or may not be true. Now, those games may play out, and we might absolutely come in here and say, I have a referendum to make about this baseball team, and here are my concerns. And it may play out in ways in which we win the majority of those games. Let's say we win 4 of 6 or 5 of 6, and I might still come in and say, I'm a little worried about some things, guys. That's what I mean by these 6 games won't necessarily, based on the results, tell you everything there is to know about the Florida State's fortunes, the Noles baseball fortunes in the postseason. But we will get a lot of good answers to what they are, I think, mentally when these games play out. I think we'll get that. How tough are you mentally?
Well, we're finally getting to a place where you're arriving. You've got the formula for the answers that I've been looking for. I'm always a guy who, as we get to about April 1st, I'm looking at top 16, top 8. I'm a broken record about this. What do you need to do to be top 16 and or top 8? In last year's group, we understood by, well before this time last year, like, oh, they're a national seed and they're going to be a top 8. This is a machine of a program. Pitching a little questionable, but they're going to score a dozen runs a game, it felt like. Well, here you go. I know that there's a Cal weekend series sandwiched in between. They're nothing great, but the travel might be a bit of an issue. You had 9 games against Louisville, Clemson, and North Carolina, all top 25 RPI teams, no matter how you slice it, ISR from Boyd's World or RPI. These are 3 top opponents. You go 5-4 in those 9 games, as long as you don't fall on your face against Cal on the road, you're staring at least being a top 10 national seed, if not a top 8 national seed, which is awesome because the first thing that you can do this weekend is you'll get points for playing top 25 Louisville, again, RPI, ISR, on the road. You take 2 out of 3 in that situation, you're ahead of the curve. But the whole goal for me now, between now and the end of the season, it's not about, hey, if you play well against these teams, this means you're going to assuredly make it to Omaha. It's, no, let's win the games against these teams to give ourselves the best chance to go to Omaha. And the best chance would be to host 2 weekends of baseball right down the road at Dick Howser Stadium. So in those 9 games, can you give me 5? If you win 6, you're a shoo-in as a top 8 national seed. But can you give me 5 out of 9 in those particular series? That's the fun thing that I'm watching now. It's almost like pelts on a wall. Give me 5 W's in those 9 games, and we're going to be in very good position.
Florida State now 30-7 overall. They're 11-4 in conference. They've been so good at home, 20-4. When you think about the upcoming series at Louisville this Friday, 6 o'clock, Jim Patterson Stadium's a fun place to see a baseball game. Louisville's got great facilities and good baseball fans. It'll be loud. It'll be obnoxious. And you'll be without one of your best players for no good reason. And I'll talk about it next. It's Jeff Cameron, Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV.
It's now that time of year where you're trading in those golf pants for the shorts because you need breathability. There's a lot of sweating that's going to be going on over the next 5 to 6 months of your life if you live where we do in Tallahassee or anywhere in the southeastern footprint on Warchant TV and the Warchant Podcast Network. Well, Bird Dogs to the rescue because they combine comfort, fit, versatility. You can wear these shorts everywhere. Here's 2 pairs that have been sent my way from our friends at Bird Dogs. Excellent blue color. You can see the built-in liner there. So it's a 2-for-1 here. You don't have to worry about 2 pieces of clothing. You could just use the liner that Bird Dogs has. Outstanding breathability. It's stretch fit. It's super light. These things are going to save your bacon if you're outdoors this spring and summer, be it on the golf course, you're going to happy hour, but your friend is insistent on sitting outside to go get that glass of wine or that cocktail. All right, if you were wearing those old khaki shorts or those old stiff cargo shorts from yesteryear, you were going to be sweating, and that was going to be a problem. Now, breathability, baby. This is exactly what you want, and it's from our friends at Bird Dogs. For a limited time for our listeners and viewers, you get a free hat when you order with code WAKEUP at birddogs.com. You get this hat right here on the screen completely free when you use code WAKEUP at birddogs.com. Support our network and let them know we sent you. Again, one more time, for a limited time, listeners get a free hat with any order when you use code WAKEUP at birddogs.com. You get this hat on the screen completely free when you use code WAKEUP at birddogs.com.
All right, I made reference to it as we went to break. Max Williams hit a home run last night, opposite field home run at that, and he's a really good player for you. He's got a ton of pop in that bat. He's a player that before the season began, I told you I thought he would hit 20 home runs. I projected him to be the most important player offensively that the team would have. Everything about the way he swings the bat, I have praised because of that level. It's just he gets on top of the baseball. It is something to behold. It doesn't even look like he has to try hard to hit the ball opposite field with pop. That's going to play with a wooden bat, by the way. He's got a professional baseball future ahead of him and a good one. And that's all the many reasons why I was excited he's a member of this Florida State baseball team. And it's why I root for him to do great things, because I think he's a fun player to watch as well. I think he cares deeply. There's no doubt about that. But he has got to get a handle on his emotions. He embarrasses himself on a regular basis, whether he knows it or not. He's going to have regret when he looks back at the way he behaves on a baseball field if he doesn't remedy this soon. And now he's hurt his team, and there's no cause for it whatsoever. And I can't pretend to understand where this anger and loathing of your competitor comes from. I do know that the sports world is littered with people who manufacture angst and slight and whatever it is they see that they deem as an affront to their being or the competition itself. It's often made up and very unlikable, and that applies to him too. But when you cross a line like he did yesterday, and it's the umpteenth time he's done it this year, I might add, and he's been warned, and you do it on a day in which your opponent rightfully took the time to show signs of support in everything that they could possibly do while being there, your competitor, including that of donning the patch with Florida State Strong or Seminoles Strong. I mean, that is absolutely, it's really just unbecoming, if I'm being nice, just to say the least. There was nothing that led up to that I could see. And again, not being in between the lines, I always am careful to say that there's definitely nothing. Maybe some words were exchanged that I'm unaware of, but there didn't appear to be anything that would lead for you to hit that home run and then subsequently berate your opponent as you round the bases yet again, including the pitcher, the second baseman, the shortstop, the pitcher again as you get towards third. Just all the theatrics. There's simply no need for it. And you got tossed for it. Seems to me it was about time you get tossed for it. I'm a Nole. I love Florida State. I like Max Williams as a player. I think he's really good. It looks foolish. There's no cause or reason for it. And now you're suspended for a huge game in an important series. Let's hear what Link Jarrett had to say when asked about it by our own Ira Schafel yesterday.
Obviously, and then you guys are struggling early and you're down. Max hits a home run. He's an emotional guy anyway. How do you handle that as I guess, do you feel like a parent at sometimes with situations like that, like helping guys understand how to channel emotions?
Yes. And we haven't done a great job of that. Of all the things I thought my teams of the last 10 years would be, exuberant and emotional probably wasn't something I saw, but man, they want to play so well and so hard that they fight for everything. And I don't know the entirety of the story. I saw, and when those umpires, I know those guys, and there were things that happened, and they said, Coach, we don't really have a choice. And okay. So we've got to learn how to manage those things better. And I didn't want it to get worse. So I just wanted Max. I just wanted to try to calm him down, and he needed to go and not be visible, or things get worse. So unfortunately, that's where we are, and I don't know the fallout of that. But it was a big home run, and I'm sorry that it led to more.
He did a good job. Link answered every part of the question he was asked and what he was going to be asked, which I appreciate. He basically admitted right from the jump that they have not done a good job of getting these kids to manage their emotions. We've hinted at that for a couple of years, Tom. Now, we have said like, man. Now, part of it is mitigated, meaning our judgment of the way that players and their theatrics come across is mitigated by the fact that we're not the only team in the country engaging in that sort of behavior on the regular. It kind of started in my mind, at least amongst the high-profile teams, with Tennessee. That said, I doubt they're the sole reason we now see pretty silly behavior by student athletes in college baseball. I'm sure it stems from a different culture that I never get to see, which is that of high school baseball or travel baseball, probably travel baseball, judging by what I have seen with travel baseball in the past. I don't know. But either way, it's the stuff that obviously in professional baseball gets you hit in the face and gets you thrown at repeatedly, which is what's coming for many of these guys if they carry on. But in the interim, certainly you are representative. You are representative of the school. You're representative of the program. And you can sense that Meat has had about enough. Meat, listen to me. Forgive me. Link has had about enough of this. I hope that is curtailed in quickly.
Yeah, hinted at, I think, would be putting it mildly. I think accused of being grouchy old men yelling at clouds, that's where I've been on this issue. I hate it. I can't stand it. You look like a-holes. And
Agreed.
I understand that it's across the sport, so if it's part of the sport, I have to kind of put down my saber a little bit and just allow it to be. But we have been, not because it's on the screen, but we have been above and beyond most other programs when it comes to this level of behavior. And it was a problem last year as well. I loved that group, but I was quick to call it out because I think it's silly. You look like children. You look like a-holes. You look like people who think that there's a film crew and you're shooting a movie. It's just it's unnecessary. It's totally unnecessary, and it really tires me because
yes,
that's a moment you should be celebrating. That's an emotional moment. You're taking the lead after falling down 4-0 in this ball game. You're taking the lead before a crowd that's in the process of healing. And you can't comport your emotions well enough in that moment to understand and read the room. Hey, man, if you want to be in some sort of film, there it is. There's your moment for heartfelt rounding of the bases, not yelling at dudes at second base and at the mound. It's the kind of crap I saw when I was in middle school, and it was put to bed then. That's what frustrates me, is I had a very good middle school baseball coach. We had some hotheads. It's what we called people, hotheads in those days. That stuff was nipped in the bud, like right away. Stop acting like a child. And unfortunately, it permeates the culture of the sport a little bit. And I'm glad that Link at least acknowledges it now, because he his personality doesn't mirror.
Well, that's why he's shocked by it.
On
Yeah.
the field. Yeah, but he's allowed it to happen for many years, and I hope that this is the watershed moment where he can go zero tolerance on this thing, or at least tamp it down significantly.
Well, and let's get to that, because here's the reason now that you actually have the cause you needed beyond being old school or thinking that it makes you look bad. You know, a lot of times, Tom, and we know this, we're sensitive to this. I mean, you're only 38, but you're 38 going on 68. And I'm 53 going on 70 probably. And so the two of us together are like, good God, man, let's go. But we're also self-aware, which that is to say, you risk becoming that guy who's overly critical of, I don't know, a Latin player who stares at a home run. You risk becoming that guy who gets exercised about kids doing something that you don't understand and therefore you're critical of. And we're aware of that. This isn't that. This isn't that at all. There's no reason for any of this. It's a baseball game, man. What are you doing? You got the better of the guy that you wanted to best in the moment the second you hit a blast oppo and are part of a huge inning to turn the game around in your favor. If you want to admire a home run for a little bit, fine. What's with the yelling at an opposing pitcher? What's with the screaming at an umpire? We've had guys this year yell at an umpire after hitting a baseball hard.
Right. Or working a walk and shouting and tossing his bat, chucking his bat, and yelling at the home plate umpire as they skip towards first.
You can't do it.
There's a humongous difference, and I'm not that guy.
No, but I clarified. That's not what we are. We're just aware that there is a fine line when older guys criticize younger guys.
If there's a fiery rivalry and you have dudes shouting back and forth and they're fighting for everything, man, it almost came to blows 2 or 3 times against UCF of all teams 10, 12 years ago. They actually had the benches clear. And I remember 11 used his old man strength to grab a couple of kids and scruff them and chuck them backwards so they didn't get suspended for a fight. If your blood's up, your blood's up. That's one thing. Taunting an opponent, that's completely different, man. Like, in football, for example, if you want to have a turnover chain or a backpack or you want to dunk on something on the sidelines, you want to whatever, that's fine. Go for it. Go for it. The moment you start taunting opponents, especially after you've done something, or taunting an umpire, I would have thought that the line would have been there. That's the one that pisses me off more than anything. I hate the inconsistencies of umpires. But if you just worked a walk, it's the 4th inning, and you thought that, the 3-1 pitch was certainly a ball and it was called a strike, and you worked the walk anyway, hey, man, you got like 5 more innings to go. How are you going to sit out of the dugout and then pound your chest and look at the umpire? Like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Well, the reason that upsets you is, A, it's self-evident, but B, it hurts you moving forward on any borderline call. You're not going to get that call. And in this case, the same application holds. You now are suspended for a game on the road against Louisville that is huge to your team. You are the single most important power hitter, anyhow, on this team.
Yep.
You also happen to be a center fielder. Now, luckily, we have those guys in spades. We've got center fielders everywhere that can really run, including the guy that's playing left currently. But I just think there was probably an opportunity, and I hope it was taken, and I imagine that it was. But when he's being told to take it to the clubhouse, that you've been kicked out of the game, and you come back down to earth, and you get out of your own head and the machismo and all the other adrenaline and testosterone that's running through you, and you kind of start to breathe. And meanwhile, the sounds of baseball are going on just beyond your view. There's a game still being played that you're no longer part of. I'd like to believe that it hits you hard, that none of that was worth getting kicked out of the game for, that none of the feelings that you had or the urge to boast or to prance and be seen or to do whatever it is you were doing in order to celebrate this temporary moment of success in a game of failure, I would hope it hits you like a ton of bricks. And when you get handed that suspension, I hope you feel like you have let your team down significantly. This is the best opportunity to curb all of it. Here it is now because you've impacted. There's a material impact on your team now.
Yeah, I thought, in this sport, eventually there's going to be a moment where there's a brawl, suspensions be damned, because these guys are showing up each other in egregious ways, and it keeps on escalating and getting worse. This would be the best case scenario for Florida State's cause, because It is a suspension. It's not a brawl, because at some point you deserve to get punched in the face for this type of behavior. And that doesn't mean that the kid's not smart away from the game or not smart in the batter's box. My God, he's an incredible hitter. But when you act like this and you've got a multi-year track record of this issue, a multi-year track record, you look like you have the IQ of a sponge down in Tarpon Springs at the docks, and you've just got to get smarter. And this is where I do start to feel old, because that's a 20-year-old kid who's succeeded in everything he's ever done, and he's going to have to learn lessons. Unfortunately, this one's the hard way. But this is where it's on Link now, because if this were to happen again, that's on you. That's on you, Skip, because this cannot be the norm. It can't.
He owned it. Yeah, he owned it. And problems start from the top down. And so you always got to go there. I mean, you can do that with the football program. And when I say that, I don't mean the head coach. A lot of times I mean even above him. But I think you always start there when you're trying to assess a multi-pronged problem, or one that has been lasting over time, that has perpetuated. At some point, you're like, well, you're either coaching it or allowing it, and we're gonna have to stop all this.
They've been allowing it for years, and he owns that. Yeah, it's just the operative question to ask is, for what?
That's how I led. For what? For what reason? Chef Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. But to put a ribbon on Florida State baseball from last night, 99% of what happened yesterday, pregame, in-game, post-game, I really thoroughly enjoyed, and I thought it was a good day. I don't want that to get lost. I think we're right to address that situation. He's now suspended for the Louisville game, is Max Williams, the first of the 3-game series. That's unfortunate. But Florida State does get the win, and hopefully some measure of psychological healing and whatever people needed from that began as they do get the win. And I do also want to continue to highlight the great play of so many other players. I tell you what, right now, we've seen this happen in Major League Baseball, Tom, where you watch a kid or a young player in the bigs with otherworldly speed just change games when they get on base. And Chase Williams is a kid right now where you're just seeing flummoxed catchers, flummoxed pitchers, situationally forcing mistakes by doing some things fundamentally that you would never ask a guy to do unless they were blessed with preternatural speed the way he is. I'm not telling you Chase Williams is Ricky Henderson, but Ricky Henderson affected games more than most any player I ever watched in the history of my baseball viewing, because of that speed. Now, he possessed pop and he did a lot of things exceptionally well. But the point is, he was a menace on the base paths. And the second a guy got on base, you were a mess if you were a pitcher. And back in those days, you were throwing over to first base 15 times and getting booed by the crowd. You were so transfixed on what that guy might do next that you never could concentrate on the batter. We saw that last night too, where you're worried about a runner and then you serve one up middle because you're worried about the guy that's on the base path. You got a guy who's daring a catcher to throw behind him, knowing that he's too far off the bag, goading you into a throw, and you can't help yourself because you're being challenged. And then you throw it in the next week and it's a free run. You got a guy that has basically told you by his secondary lead that he's going to steal second here in a second and that he's going to steal third. He's telling you, you look back at him and he takes an extra step, letting you know, I see you looking at me. Tell you what, just for good measure, just to let you know that I know I'm going to take another step towards the bag that I'm about to steal, and there's nothing you can do about it. It is glorious to watch guys affect games like that. It's rare. And when you face a team that has a player like that, who can get on base, and Chase Williams in his last 5 games, 10 of 17, on base 13 of his 22 appearances. He's stolen 6 bases in that time. He has scored 5 runs in that time. He has a double. He has a triple. He has all the things that speed does. When you face somebody like that, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. A routine single by a guy like that, and in your head, you go, yeah, it's 1-0. He's going to steal second. He's going to steal third. We're going to give up a run here.
Now, you don't want to not have Max Williams in the lineup on a Friday night, and that hurts, and that's what that last segment was about. But if you're going to have that circumstance, I'm interested to see where they slot him in the lineup on Friday, because he hit 7th last night. I think, obviously, if you go non-analytical approach in the DH era, that's perfect slot for a 9-hole guy. Because you create speed ahead of speed with Harrelson when you turn the lineup over, and then you get into RBI positions. But without Max in the lineup, what if you went Chase followed by Harrelson, and then you get into the meteor order and you keep Lodis and Bailey in those RBI spots? I'll be very interested to see where they slot him, because I don't know that 7 is the best place. Now, admittedly, this is not looking at the analytics of where the speed would do the most damage, but he's not just stealing bases. And he's getting on at a 300 clip, like, oh, when he's on, he's a problem. He's getting on base with extreme regularity and then causing havoc on the base paths, as the numbers you just outlined. So I wonder, with the absence of your number 1 power hitter, do you maybe just pair Williams and Harrelson up top on Friday night against Louisville, and maybe see if you go old school and go ground game a little bit, like the old Juan Pierre Luis Castillo Marlins back in the day?
You used a modern version. I'll use one that existed before you were born on artificial turf, and it was the 1980s St. Louis Cardinals with Willie McGee and Ozzie Smith and all these guys that just stole base after base after base, and they were a freaking problem all the way to the World Series where they faced Kansas City, and it was the worst. I hated watching that team because there was nothing you could do about it. All those guys could run like the wind blew, and they did. It was almost, you want to talk about taunting. Guys getting on base looking like track stars. I mean, looking like track stars. You were like, look at this guy. He could win the gold in the Olympics. It's Carl Lewis standing at first base. We can't throw this guy out.
I do have to do a fact check, though, because the things are cyclical. I might have given a quote-unquote modern answer, but that team was 22 years ago. I don't know. From some people's perspective, that's not modern at all. I might have
thus I gave an ancient answer.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think so. I think you gave the grandfatherly answer. I gave the dad's answer, and then we got a bunch of kids going, who the hell are all those guys?
Listen, Juan Pierre is the guy that hit the home run after Jose Fernandez died. And it was one of the great home runs in baseball history, because Juan Pierre didn't hit home runs, and he even really didn't hit home runs from that side of the plate. And he rounded the bases in tears. If you have never seen that video, go watch that on YouTube. But that's one of the players that Tom just referenced. And it was the first game after Fernandez that died, and he hit that home run to lead off the game. And I will just say, you gave me a chance to snapshot baseball, but Tom, have you seen that? Were you watching when that happened? I mean, that is, whoo, buddy.
Yes, but I do have to. It was D. Gordon that did that.
Oh man, okay, it wasn't Juan Pierre at all. Another speedy, useless player. D. Gordon, you're right.
That's right. Yeah, Juan would have been quite old at that point. But
yeah, you're correct.
Time goes by.
Now I sound like Jerry Jones mixing everybody up. Oh my goodness.
No, it's all right. Look, you sound like me talking about Christian Jones.
That's true.
In every generation.
They're the same player, the same exact player, kind of useless. No real reason to have the guy on your team other than occasionally to pinch run for somebody. Yeah, I got you.
Tom, for the love of God, the kid's name is Matthew Thomas. It's not Christian Jones. Okay, all right, it's Matthew Thomas. Yeah, that's my bad. That's my bad.
It was D. Gordon. You're right. My God, how quickly we forget about D. Gordon and apply the one cool thing that he did to some other player that had been gone for a long time.
Well, wasn't he also the one that was guilty of steroids?
Who, D. Gordon?
Somebody, yeah.
Like a buck-07?
Right, yes. He was banned 80 games. Yeah. So you'd never know. D. Gordon is the perfect example of you never know who's using roids because he got popped for 80 games.
Bartolo Colon's the other one.
Yeah. Well,
Multiple-time offender, weighing 400 pounds with not a muscle in his body.
and Bartolo's not a great guy either, but everybody loves a fat man. Isn't that the way of the world? Bartolo, not great with the family. And Bartolo had some issues now, but because he looks like one of the sausages that races in Milwaukee, everybody loves him.
I do like that you said not great with the family. I'd say, unless you think great is beating the bejesus out of women and children.
That was allegedly, but I know he had two different families that he kept like 19
simultaneous.
Yeah, 1950 style. Like, yeah.
I had a wife and kid in Baltimore, Jack. Went out for a ride, never came back. That's my man Bartolo. Hour number 2, forthcoming. Stay with. Hour number 2, Jeff Cameron, Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV, rolling on. Big River on the balls, big Wednesday. Busy day. Mentioned it. We got mainly into early on last hour and kind of carried the day. Florida State baseball with the win last night, some other ancillary issues, and the larger discussion of what happened yesterday. This hour, I want to get a little bit more into, and really the next 2 hours is going to happen from some football-related items. I will say, Tom, again, this is a football-related hour, but I do want to make mention that you have connections with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I have a couple of connections with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Maybe we should use our connections to send to pass a note. I don't know if we could pass a note along. The note would be to Getzel to shut up and not chirp at Matthew Tkachuk. It's a dumb idea. And as soon as he did it, I went, oh, here we go. Here we go. Dumbass. Anyhow, just like you to pass that along.
I can. The problem is that guy plays the game dirty, and so he has to be accounted for.
Well, and he's also better than anybody we have. So it's just not cool, and I knew it was going to happen.
More physical, yes, but he's not better than Nikita.
He's not better than Kucherov, but, man, he's really effing good. Yep. He was dominant again, and there's no reason to wake him from his slumber, and especially not from Getzel, who I love and has great hands and all those things. But, by the way, if they drop the gloves, he's getting his ass kicked.
He certainly is.
So there's no reason for it.
I just like how the natural progression of these things, Florida's finally coming around to this whole idea of, well, the cap circumvention talk, because Tkachuk was magically 100% available off of IR for game 1 of the playoffs. Something that they complained and they whined and they cried about with Tampa Bay. It's a cycle, because where we were at that point in time was we set a complaint to the league after the 2015 series, and only 2 teams voted to change the rules on the salary cap. And it was us and Dallas, and everybody else said, keep it the way it is.
Right.
Now that the goose has the golden egg for them, and it's Matthew Tkachuk, they're all well and good about how they were able to add a lot of salary before this playoff series started.
Yeah, I just in particular, when you're in that situation, man, just not a good idea. Not a good idea. First period that the Lightning largely dominated, and then found a way to lose another faceoff in their own zone, which they do all the time, and it leads to a quick goal at the end of the period, and you get dominated from that point forward.
No, well, it's 2 no-chancers for the goalie, 2 incredible deflections. And then the third goal you challenge with an interference, you come up short on it. I mean, that's thanks for playing. That's your ball game. And I think he had a case, but we all know that the league office, when it comes to that specific rule, it's a coin flip at best.
Yeah, and also we checked out afterwards because 14 seconds later, come on, get a grip. It's just they're a better team, and especially because they're healthy. You don't need to add to your problems. You don't need to add to your woes and reasons. I just, you know what I do when I watch things like that? I think to myself, because we've had players in every sport that we see do that stuff like that. Valuable players you love. It also makes me miss Maroon something terribly. We have not, I know he's been gone for a couple of years, but I mean, we miss him awfully. Yeah, we just don't have the requisite size or goonism to compete.
Yeah, they play like the Flyers used to. But look, they are, when healthy, a better hockey club. There's no full stop. That's not. There's no like. Well, that's a better hockey team when healthy, top to bottom.
Yeah, certainly deeper too. Yeah.
What you're hoping is that there might be some fatigue in their legs from going the distance last year, but none showing so far. You never know. Could still be a long series because we're better than we were last year. And that series, even though it was over quick, we played them pretty tough last year. We just lost a lot of close games. So we'll see.
So to the football related stuff here, I've seen a lot of questions in my inbox about what, and I've seen it on the boards too. So I think it's a pertinent thing here for us to address and to talk about out loud so that people have a better understanding, at least as I see it. You might disagree with me, as to what Florida State's position is within NIL and what they're able to spend and not able to spend, and kind of at least frame this issue. And it's a perfect time for it because we're trying to survive. Frankly, what I view this as is trying to survive through Friday. I think Florida State, people see players go, and when they see players go, they expect players to come in. And they want to say, look, you can't lose this player or that player and not replace them. But what I would say about where Florida State's at currently is that, A, the players you've lost, the players that have entered the portal at this point, this go-around, Tom, were not players that were ever going to really play for you this year and be a significant part of turning the corner and getting back to your winning ways. Now, there are degrees to which I say that. Obviously, you would have liked to have believed at some point Hakeem could have provided something for you. So if you want to cite Hakeem as a guy that would have played meaningful snaps for you, and now that's gone, and you want to blame Florida State staff for that, I can blame Florida State staff for the mis-eval, the inability to get this guy to play hard, the inability to bring out whatever talent you deem there to be. Sure, that's all well and good. But Hakeem was not an important contributor last year, and so far through spring hadn't done anything to give you a sense that he was going to be a big-time contributor in this offense this upcoming year. Maybe as a blocker, maybe to some degree he would have been, but not a lot. The other guys, Hester wasn't going to play. You lose Ferguson. Anybody that goes back and watches Ferguson play from last year, you'd be the first to help him pack his bags. He wasn't any good at all. You might have said, well, that's a depth piece that you would want, but he wasn't any good at all. So, and nobody even knows who Dinas was. So the rest of these guys, okay, you lose. We've already talked about Jaylen Brown. It's less about him going in the portal and more about he was kicked off the team. He had to go to the portal. He was done. He got arrested. It was over. They were done with him. So that's an unfortunate swing and a miss on a portal transfer from a year ago. I'm not saying all of these things are ideal, but these are not players that have to be replaced because of the contributions that they would have given you. They weren't really going to provide anything for you. That's what I'm getting at. But moreover, I think it's worth noting, and we did at the time, but the coaches spent all of the NIL money salvaging a disastrous class into a passable class. They did that after going 2-10. They decided, we're screwed. This is a plane heading into the mountain. We have got to do anything, something, everything we can to bring in some semblance of a class, and that is coupling both the prep ranks and the portal ranks and emerging from there with a top 25 class after a disastrous 2-10 season. And the only way to do that is to bring in bona fide players that have succeeded at a high level in the Power Four in most cases. We're talking about a starting left tackle. We're talking about a starting center. We're talking about a starting right tackle. We're talking about another offensive lineman. We're talking about a 6'7", high potential, somewhat productive player at USC in Deuce Robinson. We're talking about Squirrel White, who was very productive when healthy at Tennessee. Tangible success in the SEC. We're going to bring him in. We're talking about bringing in James Williams and spending good money on a guy that would know the system, help teach the system, and has been productive in the system for Tony White. We're talking about bringing a linebacker in who fits the same bill. This is This is what the NIL budget was spent on, was salvaging something from nothing. That's what it was. So why do I say all of that? I say that because I can sense growing frustration that we're not going out and signing a bunch of guys. And I would argue that I think what's happening, and I have an educated guess on a lot of this, but I'm also giving you some of my own opinion here, so feel free to disagree. That's to you, Tom, and to anybody else. I think what they're desperately trying to do was, they were trying to go out in the proper window where the better players are available, which is at the end of the season there, that December situation, where you can get better players and not have to pay through the teeth for them comparatively to the spring, right? Where the window is not as fruitful, with the bounty of good players don't exist, and the ones that are there, you have to overpay for. So they chose the other window. It was more pressing at the time that they did it, and it was the right time to do it. And then secondly, I would say that the other part of this has been, once they spent the money they did to put some semblance of a meaningful class together, the rest of this has been about holding on for dear life, meaning maybe having to renegotiate with some players that you don't want to lose that are on the roster currently as other programs. And this ties in nicely, and I'm going to cite the article for you. This ties in nicely to the article today in CBS Sportsline, which again gets into, or CBS Sports, I'm dating myself with CBS Sportsline talk. This gets into, there are like 5 to 6 teams that may have somewhere in the neighborhood, according to coaches in the game, of a $40 million roster or a $50 million roster this upcoming year. This is a free-for-all. This is anarchy before the House settlement passes, and there are teams that could afford to go all in. Very few of them. Notre Dame's one of them. Georgia's one of them. Alabama's one of them. Ohio State's one of them. There are very few teams that'll do it, and cost be damned, they can afford to do it, and they're also a desirable place to be, and so they're overpaying, and they don't care, and they're taking other people's players off of their rosters, and all of that is happening. Meanwhile, everybody else who's not in that tax bracket is holding on for dear life to what they do have. And there may be a couple of moves made here or there, but listen, man, Florida State is trying to make sure Darrell Jackson doesn't leave. Florida State's trying to make sure that a couple of the players they already do have that they just brought in don't leave. Because you can bet your ass that Florida State's players, including those that have not even played in a game for Florida State yet, are attempting to be poached. They're not, but teams, programs are attempting to poach those players too. And so you're not going to see an aggressive effort from Florida State's NIL budget, collective athletic department coaches to add where they've lost players so far in the transfer portal this week. You're just not going to see it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, when you stack up all the things that they did, understand that being able to flip kids from Ole Miss, LSU, Florida, and Georgia, and Auburn, and that's early signing period, cost you a lot of money at 2 and 10 to go get those kids to pay attention to you, and to maybe retain some of the kids that you already had committed to the class, to make sure that they were going to sign with you for the early signing period, so you didn't have one of those disasters like they've had so often. So that cost money, a bigger piece of the pie than it would have if you went 9 and 3 or 10 and 2, a much larger chunk of money. Then you do go get 4 new offensive linemen, 2 new wide receivers, couple tight ends. You get your quarterback. You get a defensive end that was, probably pretty expensive on the open market, but you had a personal in with pot roast that maybe helped you just a little bit there. Couple of linebackers, couple of members of the secondary. I mean, you pile all these things up, and that's a big chunk of money to have to go spend because these are all new acquisitions. And then to your point, you have a retention issue where you are still coming off of 2 and 10. Because the House settlement has not gotten through, all of these universities have a piggy bank that's larger than they thought because there are no rules right now. So they can overpay in order to ensure a playoff berth or a run at a national title. So they're just going to run up a credit card bill and they'll pay it someday later. They don't care about what it says right now on the ledger. They're going to run up the bill. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. I think to have the roster that they have right now at 2 and 10, coming off of 2 and 10, is pretty impressive, and it speaks in the sense that it speaks to they spent a lot of money to get this far, a lot of money to just get this far, because 2-10 stinks. It stinks to recruits, it stinks to transfers, and you've got to pay a premium over 2-10 to get them to come say yes to you. So I think that's where we are right now, but that's also why I don't think you should be so aggressive in the market to go overspend for a springtime edition, other than maybe a couple of players that help you, because you're not going to increase your win share from 8 to 11. You're not going to increase your chances of going to the ACC championship threefold or fourfold with merely a couple of additions. You're kind of rolling with what you got right now, save for a complimentary piece or two.
I agree. I want the fan base to have a realistic view of where they're at and what they're capable of, but also taking a good long look at the big picture here when coming to the conclusion that, hey, maybe it's best not to go spend money. Listen, in a perfect world, they'd have so much money that we wouldn't be having this discussion, that the contributions, both, to the athletic department and from the boosters and places like the Collective, like the Battles Inn and others that can do something about it, would be so overwhelming the way that it is at Texas, the way that it is at Notre Dame, the way that it is at Georgia, the way that it is at a few other places. It'd be Oregon. It'd be great where money was no object. Didn't we go overpay for a bunch of players, few of whom might actually contribute to something this year, and you might go from 8 wins to 9 wins? Who knows? Like you would go do that, but they can't do that. And this is where people do feel slightly bereft of hope. But I would point out that you didn't just go 2-10. You went 2-10 in the wrong conference. So you're 2-10 in an also ran conference. You don't have all that surplus money. You just spent it on the coaches that you gave an extension to and a raise to, and then you fired some of them, and you have to pay them too. And man, it's just a very frustrating predicament the program, I should say, finds themselves in. But I do think we have to be realistic about where they're at.
Well, I think there's no way for a dollar to be equated to a win. To where you could just plug it into a formula and say, how many players can I get for X amount of dollars? Because every market's different. Every transfer portal situation is different. But I would say that, let's just say that Florida State goes 2-10 and they acquire or retain or whatever 10 key players. This is just for argument's sake. With the money they have, you can make sure that there are 10 impact players that you can acquire through the portal, high school ranks or whatever, at 2-10. I'll bet you there's a sliding scale that if you go 9-3, that same amount of dollars might get you 13 players or 14 players
Correct.
or 15 players.
Yeah.
So the tax that we're paying right now is the suck tax. You're so bad that you have to overspend. I point this out a bunch. I'm a Mets fan. So many times in our history, we'll grab a Carlos Beltran, we'll grab a Juan Soto, we'll grab a Pedro Martinez. We have to pay so much more money than the Yankees do or the Dodgers do or whoever the flavor of that period is, because our reputation is awful. So in order to land those guys, you got to pay an extra 10%, an extra 20%. So when you're looking and saying, where's the money? I think the money's been spent to get the roster that you have. And you might say that that's not enough, but the problem is every single one of those players is more expensive because of the stench that's on you from going 2-10. And so, I wouldn't say that we're poor, cash poor right now. I'd say that everybody's more expensive because you have proven that the money has to talk more than the NFL factory can or the development reputation can. When you suck, it's expensive in a lot of ways because you lose ticket sales, players are more expensive, you got to replace coaches. It all adds up.
I want to expound on this subject, but I'll do so after we come back from the break. I do want to point out, Tom, you've nailed it. We both know there are some very rich men who are very familiar with the suck tax. Could be Brazilian prostitution, could be any number of places in which that exists.
What?
But it's that tax is a very real thing for certain people.
I don't know what you just did.
I'm making fun of you for calling it the suck tax, which was great.
What was it talking about?
And then I'm impugning.
I'm not talking about red light districts, man.
Of which there are any number of suck taxes for gentlemen who so engage. Oh my goodness. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Look, man, if life's been a little crazy for you and you want an opportunity to unwind, Cornbread Hemp CBD gummies are where it is at. Formulated to work with your body, not against your body. And look, I'm trying to be physically active a little bit more, trying to be a little bit more well aware of my mental wellness and all those things. And I have found that a little Cornbread Hemp CBD gummy, just a part of that wellness plan. Maybe when you go to bed, you want to get some good sleep. You want your body to relax. A little peace of mind is what I'm talking about. You can do it. That's a good thing. Right now, Jeff Cameron Show listeners can save 30% on their first order if you head to cornbreadhemp.com/warchant. Use the code warchant at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/warchant. Use code warchant. You'll get 30% off doing some things. CBD gummies, all natural, good stuff, working with you. This is entitled The Race to Keep Up by John Talty, writing for CBS Sports. I referenced it a moment ago. I'm not going to read to you as if you're a child, but many of you listen to this show while working or driving around, and I do have to cite the article because I want us to have a bigger discussion about this. Yesterday in the bonus hour, I talked quite a bit about the place that college football finds itself in and how more and more I think you're beginning to see the seeds of a very disgruntled viewership. Not just talking about boosters and alumni and fans of college football, but the bigger picture where at the end of last year at the playoff, Tom and I had a discussion about how the ratings had never been better for college football. And I thought that was largely born out of the fact that we had kind of crescendoed into the era of an expanded college football playoff and that there was a quirkiness to those ratings that involve newness, that involve sort of the, well, let's see how this plays out factor. You see this a lot when something is a brand new commodity or something is a new product. People are curious. And so they bother to, they watch, they get involved, and a restaurant opens and it has a huge surge that first week, first month, first year, maybe. And sustainability gets called into question when the experience of those first timers, those first few times that you go to the restaurant, when the reviews aren't so good. There's a period that takes time to catch up to those negative reviews and word of mouth. And eventually the restaurant, which did really well that year, does not carry over their success into year 2 or year 3 or year 4 and may not make it. And I'm not saying that the college football playoff won't make it, but I thought that the rating spike was really born out of curiosity more than anything else, not based on the product that we had or the health or lack thereof of the sport. Because I think the sport is right now reeling and in real trouble. And I think you're seeing a burgeoning sense of not just anger, but overall frustration, which will soon lead to some apathy from viewership. From a viewership standpoint, because of how few teams will have an opportunity to truly compete in this era if certain rules and regulations are not adopted and agreed upon. And there don't seem to be adults in the room right now. And even though many people believe that the House settlement is a foregone conclusion, I'm not so sure. And oh, by the way, it doesn't appear that it's anywhere close to the timeline they thought it was going to get done in. And, you've heard a lot of athletic directors, including our own, sort of cite this idea that there is going to be an enforceable salary cap for all of these teams. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that is a fool's errand to believe that they're going to adapt all of these new policies and enforce them across the board, and that programs will all be on equal footing, spending the same amount of money, and that they can't go a dollar over that. Nope, no chance. So we're moving more and more and more and more towards perhaps 20 teams that can truly compete, and everybody else has to decide whether or not you want to be in the game. And it ain't good. It's not good. And until it gets fixed, we're going to watch the haves and the have-nots play out more and more and more. Right now, we are not amongst the haves. I will point to this. But to the article itself, and I read as follows, and then I'll get back into discussion. It's the first day of college football's spring transfer portal window. Players are jumping in left and right, and Indiana coach Curt Cignetti is anxious. Coming off an 11-2 2024 season that included a college football playoff berth, life is pretty good in Bloomington. The university and its supporters are committed investing in Indiana football, ensuring it could be more than just a one-hit wonder. With the fiery Cignetti's unrelenting pursuit of success and the player and coaching talent returning, Indiana has a chance at making the college football playoff in 2025 again. But Cignetti is still uneasy, and for good reason. Tampering is rampant in college football and around every corner. A possible enemy lurks trying to poach one of Cignetti's players. And what was supposed to be a relatively quiet portal period has instead seen supercharged with football programs making a last grasp at adding as much talent as possible before the NCAA v. House settlement that paves the way for revenue sharing. Quote, "This is an unprecedented couple of days, weeks, where everybody's waiting on this rev share. And the 5 or 6 out there that have unlimited NIL resources, well, it's kind of scary for everybody else. I think our little pot of gold is pretty nice, but we don't have 40 million, we don't have 30 million, and we don't even have 25 million. A year ago, Ohio State made national headlines when their athletic director, Ross Bjork, said that the football program spent around $20 million on its eventual national championship roster, but multiple industry sources with knowledge of the market told CBS Sports that that was upwards of $30 million. Is Cignetti saying the top of the market is now $40 million for a national championship roster? Quote, right now, I'd say absolutely. $40 million on a college football roster. 4 times the new $10 million club at the top of the college basketball roster that Matt Norlander reported just last week. Many teams looking to spend $15 to $18 million on basketball more this week. Cignetti's proclamation is a list of the biggest spenders, and it is as long as some people think it is. Now, I stopped there. We can keep going. The article's good. But, Tom, we're getting into what I was just referencing, which is that there are about 7 teams willing to spend $40, $50, maybe $60 million on their roster, and everybody else is screwed not name those teams. You got no chance. You're screwed. They're just going to take your good players. They're going to take them, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you bleed into this with what we're seeing now, and I hope Arkansas is successful. Their athletic director is encouraging their collective to sue in order to get their money back from Madden I'm a-Leavin', who joined his brother at UCLA. And, oh, by the way, Madden never played it down for Arkansas, but he sure as hell cashed that check, and they want their money back. Are we going to see enforceable signing bonuses? Are we going to see collectives recoup buyouts? What are we watching here? Is it happening finally? The very thing that we need to have happen here real soon. Because I can tell you this, all bets are off if we get into the business of, I'm a collective, I work hard as hell to sign you, I outbid everybody. Part of the deal was that you get a incentive to sign, and it's $200,000. You cash the check. You come here for spring. You never pay it down. You leave before the fall, and I can't recoup my $200,000. This is broken. We're done. You might as well stop watching.
Well, this is where the enforceability thing of inducement, NCAA inducement provisions in the contract is hamstringing these collectives from having teeth, because you can't tie the payment to performance or even attendance, really, if you think about it. And so that's a loophole that needs to be closed. And right now, I don't know that that's enforceable. So what you're going to get into here, to rob something from politics that's nearly 30 years old, you're going to have to get into the definition of what is. You're going to have to get into what is a contract. And is a contract enforceable without collective bargaining across players, the player pool versus the university pool, that they're not employees, that they're student athletes? You're going to have to get into all the basics here in the courts, unless somebody can stand up and just create a system by which all the member institutions agree, which they won't, because you do have these institutions that want to spend $40 or $50 million to ensure that they get a banner. So It's tough. The one thing I would say, it's taken on a different form, because the form before this was that there were only 6 to 8 teams in the country, maybe 10, that could win a national championship. Now there are only 6 to 8 to 10 that can actually pay for a national championship. But the college football game has been an oligarchy for a long time when it comes to who could win a national championship over the last 20 years. It really was a very small percentage of teams. That might have dwindled more now, and it might create more problems when it comes to roster poaching. But honestly, I think there's only 2 ways out here. Number 1, unionization and collective bargaining. Or number 2, the ratings do tank. The networks get scared that their product isn't watchable anymore. And so the networks force the conferences to create rules that really have teeth to them, because now their bottom line is being affected. It's going to come down one way or the other there. It's either going to have to be congressional or collective bargaining and unionization, or the networks get so afraid that they're throwing bad money at a product that people aren't watching anymore. I don't know which one's going to win out, but I think one of those forces is going to be the one that allows for the change that we're desperately needing. I also don't know what I would set the over-under at in terms of how many years it's going to take. 4.5 years? I mean, what do you think?
They don't have time. They don't have time. This is going to fall off a cliff. You're hearing it now. See, I knew that it's always a slow follow-up to the initial complaint. It's like when you and I notice something locally about Florida State, and then the national media catches on a year and a half, 2 years later. It's like we were sounding the alarm with Bobby later on. I was sounding the alarm with Bobby later on. We were sounding the alarm with Jimbo. And then all of a sudden, ESPN, a year and a half, 2 years too late, began to do stories about how there may be trouble in Tallahassee. Yeah, college football's got a big problem on their hands, and it's going to speed up the amount of time that needs to elapse before people put their hands up and say, I'm not interested, is going to be much shorter than they think it is. Look, when you've got a kid that you sign, and the question you might ask in this situation is it a signing bonus or a playing bonus? Those contracts have to be written in such a way, right? Is it an enrollment bonus? Like once you're enrolled, are you now the bonus kicks in, you're enrolled in the university? Like, what are we going after here if I'm the collective, right? Because otherwise, this is kids stealing money in perpetuity with no rules to stop them, and nobody wants to be a part of a farce. Nobody wants to be part of something whose integrity is null and void. And that's where we're at. I mean, if Arkansas can't get their money back from the kid who just signed, he got $200,000, he never played it down, never even played in the spring game, said he was sick, and then he goes to UCLA, and there's no recourse for them. Why would any collective spend any money on any player? Just forget about it. What's the point? You're going to get robbed. You're being robbed.
Yeah, I think, that's the issue here with the NCAA provisions as they currently stand, because you cannot tie pay to performance. You're essentially just giving them money and hoping that they do what they're supposed to, which is that's not a business model. But it's one that you have to participate in, even though you don't want to do it, because you don't want to lose 10 football games a year. So
we participated in it and still lost 10 football games. I don't – at that point, what's the difference? I'll save my money.
That's what they should be afraid of, is that not just you as a collective member would say that, but a fan for gas and hotel and season tickets. And you know what? Maybe I'll just go fishing this weekend instead of watching.
Or do anything else.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen at a meteoric pace. I don't think so. I think they do have some wiggle room here, and I don't think it'll ever get past the point of no return, because college football is in people's blood on a different level than pro football is. I know it's pro now, but you get my point. College football, there's a bond there with the fan base that's very significant, but they don't have many more than about 5 years to get this thing fixed. I hope it's sooner. I just don't know where it's going to come from. And everybody's watching this car crash at once and nobody's doing anything about it, especially not the powers. Why would the SEC do anything? They're benefiting more by this chaos. Why would the elite within the SEC do anything about it? They're benefiting more in the short term by this chaos, and they don't care. It'll be the next guy's problem. It'll be the next guy's problem if you're the athletic director, if you're the president of the university. Not my problem. By the time I leave here, it'll be a mess for somebody else, and I'm going to get mine.
Problem is, well, a lot of the things that they want to implement, if you listen to the NCAA, who continues to pander and spend lots of money lobbying Congress to try to get some help here, right? Because the NCAA is nothing more than the university presidents. So see 300 presidents and understand that they are begging Congress to help them help themselves. But none of this is going to be collectively bargained, so I don't know that it's going to be upheld.
I really like the fact that they're throwing money at Congress while they're throwing money at players, and it's about the same, because you're throwing money at people you hope are going to give you a return on your investment, but they don't have to do a damn thing about it if they don't want to. It's the same thing.
Well, the problem they have now is they've lost in the courts repeatedly, so they don't really have – it's almost like they're saying, okay, look, we're trying to be the good guy. We're going to agree to pay the players. You guys have helped us see the light. But now you need to help us put some rules in place, Congress, because anytime we try to do it, it gets shot down by the courts. So I need you to allow us to have some allowances that no other business has, or this is like they're begging for rules to be put in place that they used to have in place that were not considered legally binding, and thus they were cast to the wind. And they're doing so by pointing to this example as if they acquiesced voluntarily to give money to the players, which they were told to do ages ago.
Yeah, so I got in arguments with kids I was in classes with decades ago now, when I was in college. And I was in the English department. We didn't have a journalism school, and so I was in the English department. There wasn't even a mass media degree or a multimedia journalism degree. So I'm in an article and essay workshop with a bunch of kids who don't give a damn about sports, and they would say ridiculous things about how football's impact on the university, it hinders the university versus.
Oh, well, they weren't smart kids that you were talking to.
No, they don't understand that this building was built thanks to football, right?
Right.
So this system has been totally bloated. The value of the athletics has built these opulent dorm rooms for the general student public, or these labs, or these buildings. It's been a huge money driver. It's fattened the system. The system's out of whack. The university doesn't want to have to pay for it or have to come to Jesus with the fact that it's been benefiting for decades from television revenue that has nothing to do with the academic mission of the schools. But the solution's right in front of everybody. And this is what makes me mad, because those kids who were clueless back in the day in the English department are as clueless as the athletic directors. The university presidents. It goes higher. The university officials. They need to be employees. The solution is staring you right in the face, and they don't want to admit it. They want to find any other way possible to navigate this situation other than having an employee-employer relationship with the player on a football team. That's the only way this is going to work. I don't foresee, there's no set of rules that would not get struck down on the courts without a collective bargaining agreement between the player pool, which become employees, and the schools themselves. There's no way to do it. And I think it's square peg, round hole until they come to their senses and run into the arms of a unionization, and then also the university versus the union argument. That's the only way this is going to work.
Some very good news on the front of what is allowable, what's not allowable currently. It seems like so far it has been one challenge after the next to the NCAA that has been rewarded to those doing the suing. And that at one point crossed a line over to, this doesn't make any sense anymore. We've had that discussion many times. I'll tell you what I'm talking about in just a moment. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Man, I think the last time we made mention of this individual, it was probably to have fun at his expense. But I do have some fond memories as we say goodbye to Mike Patrick. 36 years, pretty much the voice at ESPN. He teamed up back in my day on Sunday Night Football in the late 1980s is when I first recall him, along with Joe Theismann. Patrick and Theismann doing NFL football on Sunday nights. Mike Patrick is dead at the age of 80. Now, years later, famously, he asked, what is she doing with her life, about Britney Spears, long after his prime was over. And I believe that was a flummoxed, was who was he with? Who was doing color that night for the Bama game?
That I don't remember.
Was that the early days of what's his name, the former quarterback with the with Alabama that's now on Sirius XM?
Oh, McElroy?
Was it Greg McElroy?
I think he probably was a student at that point.
I can't remember who it was. I just remember that the color announcer in the moment, was it Todd Blackledge?
Could have been.
I think it was Blackledge, said, "What are you talking about?" And it really got uncomfortable in the moment because it was about to be a huge play, and he was waxing poetic about Britney Spears and her life, and he was like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, it was Blackledge. I just looked it up.
Okay. A great moment for the absurdity of it all. You know, Patrick later on, and he had a great voice, and in his prime, I can tell you, was very, very good at his job, both in basketball and football. But this happens to so many at the ends of their career, and you need somebody to put your arm around you and say, "Time's up, big fella. You're prattling on about nothing on the regular. It's embarrassing." It's like when they kept throwing Bob Knight out there, who said absurd things every day, and he was never really good at his job to begin with as an announcer anyhow.
Or you got Ditka ripping one on the chair next to
Chris Carter falling over with laughter. Looking over. He's just looking at him like, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah.
Susie, I was with the Eagles, but they got rid of me. So I'm gonna go with
He just looks over at him in shock. Oh, my goodness gracious. Anyhow, Patrick was really good. My fondest interaction, I've had two with Mike Patrick. Both involved him coming to Tallahassee to cover Florida State athletics. One in particular was fun, and that is we were doing a broadcast down on the court. I think it was before Florida State Duke. And he came walking in to do the play-by-play. And, of course, those announcers get in way earlier in the day to have their interviews with coaches and players. And he came in with the most absurd colored hair I had ever seen in my life. Like, it was the beginning of the end, Tom. This is, when guys are just, they lack self-awareness.
This is 2006. That was the night that I raced over for my psych exam to be in the third row baseline because I remember seeing him with Dickie V. And, yeah, you were like, "Oh, my God, what's going on over there?"
Just, people wearing wigs and dyeing their beard or their hair to try to look younger than they are is not new. I mean, this has been around a long time. But I got to give Mike Patrick credit, not only for being at one time the voice of ESPN as it pertains to play-by-play, but also I think being ahead of his time when it comes to creating a hair color, creating a dye, creating a look that simply left one incredulous to look at. It was not a known color. It was not part of the spectrum. You didn't know what this was. You didn't know which colors combined could form to create this other color. Like you couldn't take your crayon box and decide to do all the. You couldn't do it. But that was something, and he came waddling out, all 4'5" of him, frumpy as he was, making his way over with a big smile on his face to do the game. And I was courtside, and I'm doing an interview, and I look up, and it took everything in my power, Tom Lang, everything in my power, not to buckle over with laughter when I saw him. I had respect and reverence, but when I saw that hair color, I thought, "My God, sir, where are your friends?"
Some may question your respect and reverence, given that this is the eulogy you're choosing to deliver today, the day after Mike Patrick passes away.
They might. I didn't know him. He died at home of natural causes in Fairfax, Virginia. 36 years at ESPN. Got his start in 1982. He did NFL, college football, basketball, baseball. Wasn't good at baseball. Did women's Final Four. Did a lot, man. There's a lot there.
There's a couple that he called Laux to Snare. That's him.
Oh, it's a great call. You want to play it? You can. It's everywhere.
And he had the Dustin Hopkins 55-yarder as well. I remember that because I was standing under the goalpost for that against Clemson in 2010. And that kick was good from about 65.
Yes, it was.
That was before 65 was in vogue, too. Like, to be that far up the upright on a 55-yarder 15 years ago was a big deal. And I remember getting back to 1270 Studios after that game was over because I had to take the van back and playing I wanted to hear how it sounded. Like, how did the announcer do? And he goes, from 55. I just remember the way he said that as Hopkins is running up and down the field.
I do want to point out that, yes, as you correctly identified there after I brought it up, it was Todd Blackledge. The year was 2007. Georgia was trailing 23-20 at the end of the game, getting ready to snap the ball at the Alabama 25-yard line. Patrick turned and asked Todd Blackledge, "What is Brittany doing with her life?" Blackledge responded, "What? Brittany who?" Patrick, referring to Britney Spears, never supplied Blackledge or the viewers with a clear explanation as to why he brought it up at all. Now, I have to tell you in that moment, Tom, if you're in charge of programming, don't you offer up the gold watch? Don't you say after that game ends, I think we're done? You've done a wonderful job. You have been an admirable addition to our programming for many years, and we'll love you forever. This is the watch. Here's the going away present. The party's next Friday.
Yeah, you might get one strike because that's certainly better than accosting a sideline reporter the way that his colleague at ESPN did 3 years later, whose name always escapes me. But
Ron Frazier? Not Ron Frazier.
Ron Franklin.
Ron Franklin, yeah.
So that's at least
a verbal accosting, yes.
I'm sure it wasn't the first. So, with Mike, you might give him a yellow alert and be like, "Hey, man, ain't no pop culture references, my man."
Well, and if there is a pop culture reference, how about we not do it with seconds on the clock in a 23-20 game before a field goal?
I'd be like Ving Rhames in Pulp Fiction. You've lost your pop culture privileges. You lost your privileges. I'm sorry. One random, no context Brittany question is enough. You're done. You're done, man.
I just like Blackledge. Who? Because we both know, Tom, that there's a rule when you're a broadcast partner. You don't do anything to draw attention to a mistake, and and there's a nice way to help somebody if they made a mistake, like I did earlier in the broadcast, all that stuff. The fact that he just went, "Who?" Final hour, fourth coming. Stay with